Wonder what I just did to, like, get my little sneezing. Okay. I'm ready when you're ready. Ooh, those are some names that are going to be hard to pronounce.
Okay, we're on the air.
This one is...
Yes. Good morning. It is 10:31 on Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021. And this is time for a scheduled hearing to consider a request by Mark Russell for a conditional rezone, case number CR 2020-009. My name is Carrie Smith, and joining me today are Commissioners Pam White and Leslie Van Beek. Also present is Monica Reeves, our Deputy Clerk. And in person is John Stosich. It's hard with the list anyways, so we'll just go. Okay. And then online, we have Jennifer Almeida, our Development Services Planner. And then we have Dustin Kukla, Leticia Hewlett. I'm sorry if I'm like massacring your name. And then Rodney Masonheimer. And then I have a call-in user that we would like to identify themselves with the number starts with a 208-350.
Yes, my name is Travis Hewlett.
And then are you in favor, in opposition, or neutral?
I am in opposition.
I have the opposition sheet.
You want me to write that? Or?
Yeah, would you? Mm-hmm. So, Travis, could you spell your last name?
Yes, Hewlett, H-U-L-E-T.
H-U-L-E-T. And then, do you want address? Do we need it? Okay. And then, Dustin, can you, oh yeah, and do you want to testify?
Yes.
Travis? Okay. And then, Dustin, can you confirm if you are in favor, opposition, or neutral, and if you'd like to testify?
I am in opposition, and I will testify.
Okay. Leticia, same question.
I am in opposition, and I will testify.
Can you repeat that?
Yes, I am Leticia Hewlett, and I am in opposition, and I will testify.
Okay, you are in opposition and you will testify. Rodney Masonheimer?
That's correct. I'm also in opposition and would like to testify.
Okay. And then I have a Rainey Post that joined. We will unmute you. Rainey Post. Rainey, you are now unmuted. Would you identify if you are in favor or opposition?
Opposition.
Would you like to testify?
Yes.
Okay, and the next one that we're going to unmute is Vicki Russell. Can you identify the same answers to the questions?
Yes, I'm in favor.
And would you like to testify?
No.
Okay. All right. At this time, we have identified everyone that has joined the WebEx and is in the room. This hearing is being conducted both in person and using WebEx. Everyone on WebEx was muted. At the beginning, we are going to have the staff report and any additional exhibits presented by staff. Except the late exhibits, the staff report and those exhibits are online for you to download. If you have not done that yet, you can find them on the Canyon County website under the Land Use Hearings page. I will maintain order by restricting inappropriate discussion or conduct, including following the timelines given for testimony. If you have a question, please use the raise your hand feature that is on the bottom left corner of the participant box in WebEx. So this is a little bit of the guidelines for the testimony today. The applicant who requested the hearing or the representative will testify first, since the applicant has the burden of proof. Testimony will then be given from those in favor of the applicant, followed by the witnesses who have signed to testify as neutral or opposition. The person making the request or the representative will be allowed 10 minutes for their presentation. If a spokesperson for the opposition has been designated, they will also be given 10 minutes for their presentation. The board may make exceptions for unique and unusual circumstances and complex issues. All other individuals testifying will be allowed 3 minutes of non-repetitive testimony. When testimony in opposition is concluded, the applicant will be permitted 5 minutes for rebuttal testimony if necessary. If you refer to an exhibit or computer projection, please use specific verbal descriptions such as an exhibit number, location, or direction so that a transcript can be made for review if necessary. At this time, let's see, we already did that. Before we begin taking testimony, Monica will administer the oath or affirmation to staff and those listed on the sign-in sheet and those who have joined WebEx who wish to offer testimony.
Jen Almeida, Travis Hewlett, Dustin Kukla, Leticia Hewlett, Rodney Masonheimer, Rainey Post, John Stosich. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help you God?
I do.
Excellent. Okay, before we begin taking testimony, is there any member of the board who, for reasons of a conflict of interest, requests to be excused from participating in this item? No.
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
No. Are there any declarations pertaining to this request of meetings, such as site reviews or conversations outside of the hearing?
No.
I don't have any.
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
We will now begin taking evidence by calling Development Services staff to present the summary and any late exhibits.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have some late exhibits for this case. I did share them through WebEx and also provided copies for the board. Exhibit 30 is a letter in opposition that's signed by 16 property owners. Exhibit 31 is a letter from Travis and Leticia Hewlett that also contains some photos of maps of the property. Exhibit 32 is a letter in opposition from Tom White. And Exhibit 33 is a letter in opposition from Margaret Horstmeyer. Just a brief summary of this request. The subject property is approximately 40.17 acres. It is not located within an impact area or a floodplain. And the applicant is requesting a conditional rezone. And the requested zone is CRR1, conditional rezone, single family residential. The subject property is designated as agriculture on the future land use map for Canning County. That's Exhibit 11 in your packet. There are no residential designations within the immediate vicinity. The surrounding area is primarily agriculture in nature, as depicted on Exhibit 5. The parcel is bordered by large agricultural parcels that are currently in production. Primary zoning district within the vicinity of the property is agriculture, as shown on Exhibit 7, the zoning map, and there are no residential zones within 1 mile of the site. Area subdivisions, there are no subdivisions within 1 mile of the site. The subject property has frontage on McElroy Road, which is a public road, and the applicant is proposing a shared driveway on the east and west sides of the property. Nampa Highway District noted that the property has one approved point of access onto McElroy Road. The eastern proposed access has not yet been permitted or approved. Individual domestic wells and septic systems would be provided for the new residences. The subject property is located within a nitrate priority area, and the requirements of Southwest District Health would be adhered to. There are also several wells within 1 mile of the site that have been shown to be high in nitrates. That's found on Exhibit 13. Boise Project stated that there are no facilities on the subject property. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended denial of the conditional rezone, on November 19th of 2020. Staff has found that the request to rezone to R1 is not consistent with the following conditional rezone criteria. 070607A, that the proposed conditional rezone is not consistent with the Canning County future land use map and multiple goals and policies as outlined in Exhibit 1 of the staff report. 070607B, that the proposed conditional rezone is not more appropriate than the current zoning designation. 070607C, that the requested conditional rezone is not compatible with the surrounding land uses. 070607D, that the requested conditional rezone will negatively affect the agricultural character of the area. And as such, staff is also recommending denial of the request and have provided findings of fact, conclusions of law and order for the board's consideration found in Exhibit 1 of the staff report. That concludes my summary, and I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Jennifer. Is there any questions for Jennifer?
Not at this time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No. At this time, we will begin testimony in favor of this request. And John? Yeah, you can come up here to the front and then just start with your name and address for the record. And then just as a reminder, you're going to have 10 minutes of non-repetitive testimony.
Okay,
You don't have to use it all, but you are welcome.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So my name is John Stosich. I live at 6579 Blue Ox Lane, and I'm here representing the Russells in this case. So appreciate the opportunity this morning. And as stated, our original application request did receive a denial from staff. 1 approval and 4 denials from planning and zoning commissioners. As our original request was presented, what this told us is that we need to make a few changes. Prior to discussing the changes that we are proposing, I would like to take a minute and give you some property background. When Mark and Vicki Russell purchased this property, it was in disrepair and run down, to say the least. Most of the farm ground had tall weeds. It looked more like a wildlife habitat than a farm field. From day one, their intention was to take pride in ownership and started from scratch. The Russells understood that the farm ground was good and had great potential. They cleaned up the field, they had manure spread, installed a pivot, and cleared off every building on the property, house included, which there were quite a few buildings, I might add. Place starts looking really good. The Russells, again, like to take pride in what they do. They also take into consideration the suggestions that were made in the P&Z meeting. First of all, we believe our main mistake was a zoning request. Zoning should clearly be rural residential rather than R1. This zoning is more applicable to the area. Concerns we heard. First of all, building lot placement. In a way to consolidate the buildable lots together instead of the pivot corners. 2, the lot size not conforming to the surrounding 10-acre parcels. More homes in a small community. Basically, growth. The following are layout proposals for the commissioners to review to see what makes most sense, and clearly we would be open to any ideas the commissioners may have for approval of this project. First of all, lot consolidation. This plan puts all the building lots in the southwest corner of the 40 acres, which would basically consist of 3 2.5-acre parcels and 1 that remained with the larger property and the pivot. This, of course, is our least favorite because it takes away usable farm ground and leaves 3 pivot corners dry. It also interrupts the efficiency of a center pivot to make a full circle, but it is an option. The second is our original layout. Of course, instead of having three 1.7-acre parcels with the rural residential, there would be 2-acre parcels. So there would be 3 2-acre parcels in 3 of the corners, and then the remainder would be left with a complete pivot itself with a buildable lot on the other pivot corner. This certainly makes the most sense in the usable farm ground. Third, in order to reflect the 10-acre parcels that are on either side of this parcel, we would be willing to create 4 10-acre parcels with a pivot agreement to where basically it's a pivot and farming agreement between the 4 landowners where they can manage and farm the ground, keeping the space open. And with this, each parcel would contain their ag exemption, and of course the 4 parcels would be congruent with what's currently there. I would might add that even though within a probably a half-a-mile radius, there are at least 5 parcels that range from 1 acre to 3.5 acres, just for reference purposes. So growth in a small community. We all understand growth will take place, but it should be managed. Our goal is to preserve and maintain the agricultural field, not only today, but for the future. For this reason, we have placed the developmental agreement. Certainly, we would be interested in putting even more restrictions on those by, instead of allowing 2 homes per site based on Canyon County code, we would do a single lot, or basically a single dwelling, what do you call it, limitation on those parcels. So, commissioners, hopefully you can see that we've put a lot of thought in this project, and we feel like it's a viable project for the area. So I stand for any questions.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for the representative?
Thank you, Madam Chair. None at this time.
I have one, Madam Chair.
Commissioner White?
Are the Russells, is their personal home going here?
Their personal home, they've got 2 children, and this is one of the main reasons that they've purchased this property, is basically for their children. So the children would be building homes here.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Van Beek?
The applicant will not have a home located here.
As of right now, no.
Okay, thank you.
There was an exhibit that referenced administrative land divisions that are available on the property.
Yes.
And if they have the intention for 2 children to live there, that would suffice with administrative capabilities, correct?
That is correct.
All right. If there's no additional questions, we'll move on to testimony in opposition. You're welcome to stay there. We'll hold all your comments until rebuttal. Okay? Oh, okay. We've also have TJ Wellard, who has joined the WebEx portion of this meeting. TJ, would you like to testify in favor of the request or in opposition?
I am just an interested spectator today.
Sounds great. So we'll just leave you on mute and thank you for joining. Okay. So at this time in opposition, there was not an identified spokesperson for the opposition, so we'll just go in an order that I've got down. So Travis Hewlett, we'll unmute you. Please remember to state your name and address for the record, and then you will be given 3 minutes of non-repetitive testimony.
Hello, my name is Travis Hewlett, and I live at 9418 South Canada Road in Melba, Idaho. And I just want to once again state that I am in opposition of this. He has 2 building permits. I say let him have the 2 building permits. That's what that ground is allotted with. Let him have them. He has stated, Mark Russell has stated in the meeting that he had here last summer that his building his main home in McCall, and he travels between McCall and Hawaii is where he stays. This is an ag community. On Southside Hill, there is a sign that says, welcome to the Melba Valley, the seed heart of America. There are a tremendous amount of seed crops that are grown in this fertile, nutrient-rich ground in Melba. And we service farmers throughout the United States as well as the world with valuable seed to grow crops. Well, one thing in life is we all have to eat. And to grow the crops that we are going to eat, we have to start with the seed. Well, we grow lots of seed here. Not only seed, but we raise many other crops. We need to keep this ground farmable for ourselves, our children, our grandchildren, and future people that are going to move into the world. We need to save this farm ground. That's what this is all about, is saving farm ground. I'm in opposition, and I think we need to keep it as this ag community the way it is, and keep it farming. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Any questions for Travis? All right, the next person to testify is Dustin Kukula. You are being unmuted, and as a reminder, your name and address for the record, and you are being given 3 minutes of non-repetitive testimony.
Dustin Kukla, 7643 Melmont Road. I am in opposition of what Mark Russell is proposing to do with this property. I farmed that property previous to Mark Russell buying it. It's very fertile farm ground. I raised really good crops on it. I actually farmed the property adjacent to it across the street. We're worried about this multiple house units that he wants to put in is going to open the floodgates for him wanting to put in a subdivision. And that's what he did with his property in Meridian. We do not want to see a North Nampa, CUNA mess like what's going on now happen here. Our schools are already full. There's no water, there's no sewer, there's no nothing. So if he starts putting in multiple houses, we're going to have more wells. What's going to happen to the wells we got now? You're going to be drawing on them. Second is he's got an existing well there now, and he has already started one of the lots as far as building, in which he told us was going to be a shop, and he is going to put living quarters in the top of it. They have not drilled a well. They're putting septic in today as we speak. And the existing well that's there, he told us in the meeting, is going to be for livestock only. Well, how are you going to have livestock there only, or have any corrals, when he's got this pivot going around on there? So that's a concern. And second concern is him tearing out existing wastewater ditches that are running from other properties adjacent to him that go through there, and him trying to cram it all down one ditch and flood out all the neighbors and destroy our ditches and our properties. Third is the traffic that he wants, that will basically be on that road that we really don't need. And then for him to put these houses in these little tiny corners with this pivot going around, there will be runoff from that pivot. Because that field, if you look on the map, it shows how each field was irrigated. It's at a slope. All those slopes are still there. This land was not leveled out. It wasn't anything. He just slapped a pivot on it, had a guy come throw some compost down, and he's going forward with it. There's some concerns there, but we do not need to get started with this housing development out here in an ag community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Van Beek?
I have a question for Mr. Kukla. Two questions, actually. Mr. Kukla, I thought I heard you say that the applicant had taken out some of the ditches. Is that what I heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then the second thing, it's my understanding also that you farm in that area. And what type of crops have you grown on that ground, or do you grow?
I grow seed crops and feed crops. So I grow sweet corn for seed, beans for seed. I used to raise alfalfa seed. Yeah, on that property that Russell has, I've raised seed corn and beans and wheat for seed. That's what I've raised on that property.
Okay, and so in the harvesting of that, it would be, I'm in agriculture, could you talk about the process for harvesting? You would have heavy equipment that comes next to that property line. Can you talk about that?
Well, yeah, not only just in the harvesting, but we have all summer long where we're spraying spraying insecticides, and we're spraying Roundup and things like that too, which I've known, like north of Napa, there's been some problems with that where the subdivisions have been complaining against the farmers out there spraying or trying to bale their hay at night. Or on the seed crop on the beans, we cut those in the middle of the night when the dew is on, and then we harvest late in the afternoons and late into the night till the dew comes on. Plus the tractor work during the day.
I'm sure one more question. So, Mr. Kukla, I'm familiar with the right to farm, and I'm sure that you are also, but if you have a fly-on or some type of spray application that needs to happen, even with the ground rig, can you talk about what happens in the event that you have traffic or someone in proximity of your equipment? Maybe rephrase the question. So if you had someone in proximity for certain applications, would you not have to stop, even though the right to farm would be in place, you would have to stop your equipment and wait a certain period of time?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes,
there.
Exactly.
Okay, could you talk about that better than I have?
Well, so you're kind of asking, so if there's, you mean like borders and everything? Are we going to have to start leaving borders along the property and stuff? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, but if you're running equipment, and I'm sorry I'm not stating this clearly, but you have to stop your equipment in the middle of an application if you have, or certain, and I don't know what they are, but you would have to stop what you're doing and wait to resume your activity if you had parties in the area that were not, you understand
So you're saying like if they're having a big barbecue or something out there and then we're trying to work ground and spray and do stuff like that. Is that what you're asking, ma'am?
Well, yes and no. And I'm sorry, I'm not doing it well. I just know my husband works for Simplot Grower Solutions, so he's familiar with the Right to Farm Act, but it doesn't mean that you get an uninterrupted process for application on spray. So you would have to stop and wait for, if there's traffic in the area or people that are around that spray zone, you'd have to wait for them so that they don't get hit by the application.
Correct. Yes, that's correct, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Not this time.
Thank you. The next person on the list to testify is Leticia Hewlett. You will be granted 3 minutes of non-repetitive testimony, and at this time I do want to let you know some of the items that we have already heard in opposition to the request so that we don't hear additional testimony on them is quality of the farm, including the soils, the right to farm, the not having adequate city services available, including wells, possible road traffic, that the schools are full, and that there's concerns for historical drainage. So what you can say is if you agree with the testimony in support of those items is that you support that testimony, but in order to keep the hearing moving, non-repetitive testimony would be requested. So Leticia, sorry about all that, but it's your turn.
Understood. Thank you. My name is Leticia Hewlett. I reside at 9418 South Canada Road, Melba, Idaho. I just wanted to point out that while Mr. Stosich said they wanted to maintain an ag feel, we don't want to just keep an ag feel. We want to keep production ag going in the Melba Valley. And one of the proposals that they're throwing out is 4 lots at 10 acres. And 4 lots still do not maintain ag use. At any point, they can decide, any of those separate owners can decide not to farm, and they're no longer in ag production. And once they're out of ag production, it's going to be near impossible to get those back to ag production as it changes hands. Also, just to highlight the conversation that is specific to aerial application and drift with different products, people need to understand that in the Melba Valley, there are a lot of restricted use pesticides that farmers are labeled for to grow those seed crops. And again, anytime you're trying to apply those, whether it be aerial application or whether you're using a sprayer with 90 to 100 foot booms, it's going to make it very problematic for a farmer to navigate around homes and animals that are domestic animals on people's property, that are a dog, a cat, and their landscaping. So it just creates another challenge for farmers to continue working and producing in an area where it should be ag. It shouldn't be residential smack dab in the middle of where they're trying to farm. And one last point is on the access roads that were originally proposed. Kelly Kramer has the private access road on the east side, and I believe Mr. Horstmeyer on the west side. And to put additional access roads, again, becomes an eyesore for residential for sure, if even approved.
Okay. Thank you, Leticia. Any questions?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, our next person is Rodney. Same things apply for you. You've got 3 minutes. Name and address, please.
I live at 6760 McElroy Road, Melba, Idaho. I currently live just to the west of the Mark Russell property, and I am in opposition because of the fact that this is ag country, and it should stay ag country, and the general use can be revoked at any time, therefore allowing multiple residents. They're currently building in the southwest corner, which is directly in front of our residence. And I'm concerned that they'll be adding, they're currently putting in a septic tank, which could possibly impact, our septic, our well. And they have a access road that goes along the west side of the property, which is 5 feet from the current boundary line. And according to the ACCHD Napa Highway District, number 3, it says that there's supposed to be a 75-foot easement from the residential approaches, which I'm not quite sure if it's just the approach into the property or if it's in the road, but it is the new access road is currently running parallel to our road into our property, which I think, depending on the amount of traffic, and that is going to create even more dust and problems for the area. I just believe that it's currently in agricultural, and he's allowed 2 homes, and it should stay that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodney. Any questions?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
No. The next person signed up is Rainey Post. You're being unmuted, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Rainey Post. I reside at 2522 South Park Road, Melba, Idaho. I am in opposition of this. My parents are Kelly and Vicki Kramer. They farm behind Mr. Russell's property and to the east of Mr. Russell's property. And I know that Mr. Russell has been banking on my parents giving them access to their or easement on their road to get into their property on that backside. And I'm telling you, my parents will not give an easement on their road. So his lots are going to be a lot smaller because he's going to have to put in his own road right next to my parents' road. My parents farm close to 600 acres of sweet corn every year. With that comes detasseling crews. And sometimes we have between 50 and 60 cars traveling up and down that road every day to get to the cornfields, to detassel, to make their crops, so their crops can be pollinated. So it's an ag community. It's what it needs to be, unfortunately. So, and I know everybody said it, but I've been to 3 different town hall meetings in the last 4 months within a 4-mile radius of this property, including Mr. Russell's. And if we let this pass, I'm afraid it's going to keep opening the gates for everybody else. And I know that's what everybody else has said and feels the same way. So again, I'm in opposition to it.
Thank you, Rainey. Any additional questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes. Commissioner Van Beek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Post, I have a question on, thank you for the tie that your parents are Kelly and Vicki Kramer. They've written a letter to the Board of County Commissioners. It's listed as Exhibit 21. And at one time, you have a vested interest in testimony to back up what you're saying. You approached your parents to be able to split off a portion of land so that you could build on that property, but was told no in order to preserve that land. Was it you that wanted to build there and approached your parents? And
yes, my husband approached my parents 10 years ago, and my parents own quite a bit of land out in the area. And my parents from day one have told me, this is all farmable farmland. If we were to sell it to you, then we're taking away farmland, and we have to preserve what we have. And I am their child. And so my husband and I, 9 years ago, found a piece of property, 20 acres, that had a building lot already on, or a split on it, that we purchased. And it was a struggle because it was more land than we could really afford at that point. But my parents, and I'm their flesh and blood, were like, I'm sorry, but farmland is meant to be farmed, and we feel that way. And we are not splitting off any of our farmland for myself or my other 2 sisters. And so currently my other sister has a lot in Melba in a little mini subdivision that she's currently getting ready to build on as well too, because our parents have always felt so strongly that the farmland needs to be saved for farmers. If we don't save it, we're not going to have any land to farm. So yes, my parents have never given us a piece of land or sold us a piece of land. We had to go out and buy our own in order to build our dream out there for our kids and have 4-H animals. And we do farm our 20 acres. And it is a lot of work for people that normally don't farm or have a piece or have lived on a quarter lot or a half-acre lot. The weed control, the gopher control, it takes a lot to maintain all that. So I just hope they understand that too, because it is tough for farmers to keep water running down ditches when people don't burn their weeds, or when their animals are out chasing livestock. My parents have 400 head of cattle that we are currently calving out right now, and we calve them out in our cornfields that we've harvested the corn, so they eat the corn stalks, and we calve our calves out there. And we have neighbors' dogs that chase our cattle all the time, and because people don't keep track of it, or they're used to living in town, and so when they move out into the country, they feel like it's like free range, and so animals just kind of go wherever.
Thank you for your testimony. I just want to have you clarify for the record one more time. I'm assuming you're speaking on behalf of your parents that you have their support for your testimony. No access granted to the property. I guess I would want you to state that again.
Yeah, I do have my parents' support, and I do speak for them. I do know they will not grant access to their road that goes to that borders Mr. Russell's property on the east side.
And that is the same road that is used for farm labor for harvest?
Yes. Yep. It is traveled every day by several workers.
Thank you for your testimony.
Yes.
Thank you. At this time, we will begin the rebuttal testimony in which the applicant's representative will have 5 minutes of rebuttal testimony. And go ahead and state your name and address again for the record.
You bet. John Stosich, address is 6579 Blue Ox Lane, Idaho.
Thank you.
And so just as far as information-wise, the Russells were farmers. I mean, they still are farmers. They had 60 acres of farm ground in Meridian that they did sell. And so they do know what they're doing as far as farming wise. You know, taking out ditches. I mean, they're going to do things right. I don't think this isn't about preserving farm ground, because they've proven that they have an interest in preserving that farm ground by having a center pivot. They also have not taken any ground out of production. There was about 7 or 8 acres that had the buildings, the house, all that kind of stuff on there. So if there was 4 building permits added to this, there would be 4 lots on the 4 corners. If that's what the way to go, that's an additional 8 acres. And so everything else would be farmed. There's, let's see, there's certainly been some assumptions that have been made, you know, that there's not any water. There's no real, yeah. So there's certain things that have been assumed that are just assumptions, as you're aware. If we take for example, the 10-acre parcels. If somebody came out and purchased a 10-acre parcel with the understanding that the pivot is going to take care of the farm ground, and that there was a farm agreement that was in place, then all they do is take care of around their home and the farm and the weeds and the spraying, and they understand that everything has its place. It's still, they're part of the farming community. They're part of what's there. I do want to make note that a week ago, there was a application that you ruled in favor of, and that is the Satterway hearing last week. That was approved, which is only 1.5 miles away from this project. That project was a split of 3 additional parcels of less than 10 acres. I think they were around 7 acres or so. This project has better irrigation. It has a better plan, and I think that with that in consideration, that hopefully we can find some agreement here to be able to put in place. And so that's
let me finish.
I believe that we have a project here that meets those standards. That was it. It was the planner Dan Lister, and I don't know if you remember that project from last week, but that was in Melba, and it was very close to this. And I'm kind of surprised that there wasn't this much opposition for that one as there is on this one, because it's in Melba, it's close by, and we're not, I guess, and the reality is we're not looking to try to develop the whole place. We're looking for 4 buildable lots that can be sold individually. I'm not sure. I always tell people that it doesn't matter if your kids are going to be there or if you're trying to split off some land for the kids, because the kids 2 years from now can sell that land and move on and do something else. It's more about the principle of, what somebody has a right to do, and hopefully you'll kind of see where the Russells are coming from. And we've again put a lot of thought into putting this together so it would be presentable and very, very doable, as well as keeping the farm ground.
Are you done? Time for questions?
Yes,
Commissioner White.
My grandparents farmed, but I'm not a farm girl or anything like that. But I'm very curious about the pivot proves they are going to preserve farm ground. I think a pivot, now if I'm wrong, be sure and tell me, but a pivot is not a permanent structure. Isn't a pivot a sprinkling system that runs in a big circle and a great big arms out, kind of spider-like in a way?
It can be moved from one property.
And it can be moved. There, it's not a permanent structure. So a pivot proves, a pivot doesn't prove that it's going to preserve farmland, because if you put 4 homes around there, they'll have their own ability to have a well and all that kind of stuff. So I'm struggling with that as a reason to, say that this is going to be preserved as farmland. And if they put, you gave us 3 options, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, we did go over 3 options.
Okay. But they're out there right now building. So which option are they starting construction on?
Well, they've started in one of the corners.
Okay.
So it's all 3 of these options are still viable.
Okay.
It's not that they've decided that we're going with this option, but they can go with all 3 of them.
Okay.
Would I be able to ask you about the pivot itself or the farm ground, preserving the farm ground? They would be willing to put some deed restrictions on the farm ground. I know a development agreement does not ultimately, they can be changed. A development agreement can, somewhere down the road, be, I think, to be removed. But some kind of deed restriction would allow that to stay farm ground. And that's, they're not looking to develop it. The one thing that I don't like to see is a piece get developed or split and split and split and split. Satterwhite properties, one of those examples. It was originally split, and then it was
on there. It also says that local irrigation drainage ditches that cross this property in order to serve neighboring properties must remain unobstructed and protected by an appropriate easement. So I have some concern that there's a removal of laterals or ditches of any kind on that property, because what I didn't see in here was a letter of support. This was the only one I saw, Exhibit 17, so nothing's been provided that would give the property owner the ability to remove that. That would be problematic. I know Mark Twain, whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting. And so to remove access of a drain ditch, specifically spelled out by Boise Project Board of Control, that would be problematic for me. I come from an ag background. And then I wanted to address the solder white. I do know that case. I'm familiar with that. I sat on that decision. So the main difference is, I would say, it had access. It had a larger size of parcel, which would allow it to maintain an ag exemption and provide a hobby farm for that. And then it had building envelopes. I understand, I'm hearing there are some things on there, but I think if we're going to start comparing, there's some fundamental differences on that property, and the board did deliberate on that and required additional research on that. So I don't find that the same in comparison.
And just to add to that, specifically, there is already 2 platted subdivisions within the vicinity of Satterwhite. The average lot size was 14 acres versus 40 acres for yours. And so there is a significant difference on the 2. And so I just wanted to dispel any confusion on that there's not a precedent in that case, because they're not similar.
Can I make a comment about that? So first of all, about access, there's plenty of access. It's not that they have to use that road to get access to the back.
That's correct.
Through the highway district, they can, depends on the 75 feet or a variance. And we've done any of those, and I don't see an access as an issue in this case. The precedence as far as average size, there is 2 10-acre parcels on the side of this part of the property, and if that was created, it'd be 10-acre parcels, then that would, in my opinion, be conducive to the area. But they do, and then on the drain ditch, I know that they've discussed all those items and have created a solution for that, so that he could put the pivot on there, so that the wastewater would have access to wherever it needed to go.
So does this Madam Chair,
Commissioner Van Beek?
does this property then receive the tailwater? That's not what I read in this, that the ditches and laterals that cross this property serve neighboring properties. So unless it had tailwater, it received the end of wherever that water was going. I still don't have any documentation in file that shows either permission from a Boise project board of control, or B, that your mitigation issues, which is just testimony that it's addressed the concern of neighboring properties.
So I think that would be certainly something that we would be willing to obtain as far as the Boise projects, to show that everything is.
And just a statement for the record, I generally don't operate on apologizing instead of permission, and I don't know that that's what's happened here, but I do know that those irrigation ditch companies have a significant investment in maintaining access and water before there's investment.
So I don't know what, to be honest, I don't know what if it's actually a ditch that carries water to another property,
mm-hmm.
or if it's wastewater that's come through the property.
Right, and that's not made clear in the record, I agree.
And most of the ditches, as you can tell from the picture, a lot of those ditches were to irrigate the property.
And Madam Chair, are these concrete ditches or dirt ditches?
That I don't know, but I assume that they are dirt ditches.
Okay.
But,
and I think still for the record, Madam Chair, that those, whether they're concrete ditches or just dirt laterals or whatever they are that run through there, that they carry the same weight or significance. We just don't know what it is.
This field was broken up, I think, into 5 parcels. And so, of course, put it on there, and there's all this irrigation.
Okay.
Makes sense. Any additional questions pertaining to this testimony? Ready for a motion to close public testimony?
Madam Chair, I move to close public testimony.
Second. There is a motion by Commissioner Van Beek and seconded by Commissioner White to close public testimony. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Public testimony is now closed. This is the time for deliberation, and based on the staff report, testimony, and exhibits we have received today, does the board have any changes it would like to make or request to be made to the findings, conclusions, and orders?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Van Beek.
I appreciate the testimony of the applicant and the desire to relocate. For me, the precedent that's set in this case is that we have a farmer, and albeit 60 acres, I'm not here to talk about what kind of a farmer. It's a farmer that sold for development and purchased another piece of ground. So there is some suggestion that perhaps this could lead to further development. As I look at the findings of facts and conclusions of law and order, staff decided that it is the requested designation is not more appropriate or compatible, that it would negatively affect the character. There are not infrastructure or services presently available, doesn't represent orderly development, incompatible with ag uses. We can take out the access as that can be mitigated for a highway district. But the proximity of houses being located in a corner, I think, would become problematic. We've seen some requests coming back for people that built in ag grounds right on a property line where a variance, and those are hard to prove, and then it becomes an emotional decision because you've got money and structures involved. I find that staff has done a good job, including their goals and policies that they've used with the comprehensive plan, and would support the planning and zoning decision to uphold a denial in this case, given that we have farmers who are actively grazing, calving, harvesting crops, seed crops, high-dollar crops. They go globally, and to interrupt that process, it simply isn't in our comprehensive plan, and this already has 2 buildable lots available. That's my position, is to uphold the planning and zoning denial.
Thank you, Commissioner Van Beek. Commissioner White?
Yes, I don't know, as I look at this, when I first looked at it, just opened the book, and when I first looked at it, I'm like, that's spot zoning. It's just like, it's just, it's not consistent with the area. It's, from what we've heard, it would be very difficult for me to even look at it and say it's compatible if we put, the 4 on there. And the way, with having so many, with all the options and that sort of a thing, that makes me think there's a whole bunch of plans that we're going to look at and, do with this, so it's not. And one of those wasn't really seed farming. It was, the different ways to place the lots and that sort of a thing. And I understand personal property rights is a big old deal to me, because I know a lot of times that the piece of property and all this stuff is, their life savings and stuff like that. But I think the Russells have managed that very, very well. And it's unfortunate. I always like to meet them, but I understand what the way the conditions are. But anyway, this just, I have a compatibility and a consistency issue with this as spot zoning, so.
Thank you, Commissioner White. I would also agree with your guys' comments, as well as staff's finding for the changing the character of the area. It's a predominantly agricultural area. We've heard from the farmers on the value of that. I also heard from the applicant's representative, Mr. Stosich, that they have a right to do it. And I also agree with property rights, but we, per state statute, have the authority to identify zones and zoning districts. And Canyon County has put together a process for you to have some administrative land divisions that many have construed as a right, and to be able to exercise those. So I would encourage you to exercise that option for the 2 available building lots that are available. So with that, I also support the staff FCOs as presented. And if you're ready, I would entertain a motion for that.
Madam Chair, I move that we uphold the denial of the conditional rezone request in case number CR 2020-0009, the case of Mark Russell for 40.17 acres located in Nova.
And to accept the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and order as written.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law and order as written.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
There is a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, I would have one thing to say, because I think this is an investment piece of property for the applicant, clients, and that sort of thing. And I would just suggest that they put together one substantial use for this property and bring it, not a puzzle for us to look at. And I don't say that in insulting manner at all, any way, so please don't take it that way.
Thank you. So there's a motion before us and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Your request for the rezone has been denied. I'm sorry about that. And any additional questions? Jennifer can visit with you about any recourse that you have and other ways that you can move forward. So, all right.
Very good.
It is 11:31 and this case is closed. Thank you.
Okay.
We off the air?
We are off the air.
We are off the air.
Hey, that's